According to the report, 22% of people experiencing homelessness are seniors, and many of them say this is the first time in their lives they haven't had somewhere to call home.
They say that rock bottom has a basement. If you want to see it, you don't have to look far. Just look down. We are living in a time of unprecedented paradox. The stock markets are rallying. Technology is evolving faster than we can comprehend, and skyscrapers are piercing the clouds. But in the shadows of those towers, a different reality is taking hold. It is a reality of broken bones and untreated cancer, of teenagers disappearing from classrooms into the fog of addiction, of grandmothers sleeping in frozen cars because their pension checks can no longer buy warmth. I'm talking about the dope, the heroin. I have cancer that's been untreated for years. Terminal melanoma, says a voice from the street. It is a voice we try to ignore. Trump's really got us in the gutter right now. They got us in the gutter trying to come up with all these taxes and everything. All the housing, the welfare. Like, what's really good? All our lives matter. These are not just sound bites. They are the distress signals of a collapsing society. Welcome to Homeless US News.
When we see that seniors are experiencing homelessness for the very first time in their lives when they're 75 years old or 80 years old, it's the very real human face of a sustained affordability crisis and a housing crisis that's been ongoing.
Today, we are launching a global investigation. We are going to take you from the frozen sidewalks of Canada, where indifference is as deadly as the winter wind, to the sun-bleached desperation of Los Angeles, where 72,000 people are fighting for survival. We will walk the terrifying corridor of Kensington Avenue in Philadelphia, where a new chemical weapon called metamidine is turning human beings into statues. This isn't just a story about drugs or poverty. It is a story about dignity. We want them to know that they have great dignity in who they are as a person, says an outreach worker, that they're valuable, that they're important to us. But does the world agree? When you walk past a body slumped on the sidewalk, do you see a person or do you see a problem? Ben didn't want me to succeed. I didn't want to go back to doping stuff. I smoke hater right now. Over the next hour, we are going to peel back the layers of this crisis. We will expose the chemical evolution of the drug supply in 2025, the hidden silver tsunami of elderly homelessness, and the political games played with human lives. This is the rival perspective, the unfiltered, raw truth that the evening news won't show you. We are going to make you look. We are going to make you listen. And by the end, we hope to make you care.
Look at some of the patterns and trends underneath the data. It starts to paint that picture of our systems are failing. Our housing system is no longer providing housing that meets the needs of the people who live in our communities.
The Northern freeze Canada's quiet catastrophe. Let's begin in the north. In the collective imagination, Canada is a land of safety, of social safety nets, of politeness. But on the streets of Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal in 2025, that image is shattering. Homeless people in Canada don't just fight the bitter cold. They fight the indifferent gaze of a society that prides itself on compassion, but practices exclusion. Some sleep under the awnings of banks that hold billions in assets. Others huddle by bus stops, heads bowed against the wind, trying to disappear into their own coats. No one chooses this. Life pushes them here. A renoviction notice, a medical emergency, a mental health crisis, and then the world turns away. Consider the story of Terry. She worked as a sales coordinator. She had a life, a career, a plan. Then her landlord sold the property. In the tight housing market of 2024, she couldn't find a new place. Eviction day felt like a cruel joke, she said. She ended up in a hotel room for a year with her children, watching her savings evaporate on takeout food because she had no kitchen. This is the hidden homelessness that plagues the middle class. But for those on the street, the situation is lethal. In Montreal, during the deep freeze of early 2025, tents collapsed under the weight of snow. People were found frozen to the ground. No, I'll die. I know I will, said Tanya, a woman in Barrie, Ontario, facing a night of minus 20 degrees without a tent. It gets that cold. This isn't just bad luck. It is a systemic failure. The financialization of housing has turned apartments into investment vehicles for massive firms, like Starlight Investments, driving rents up by 23% upon turnover. In Vancouver, the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment has hit $2,800. To afford that, you need to earn $48 an hour. The minimum wage is less than half of that. The math is broken, and into this despair creeps the toxic drug supply. In Vancouver's Downtown Eastside, the alleys are rain-soaked traps. People battling addiction gather in these tight spaces, where discarded foil and burnt wrappers tell the story of a daily war for survival. But in 2025, the enemy has changed. The drug supply is no longer just fentanyl. It is a cocktail of unpredictability. Medetomidine, a powerful veterinary sedative, has migrated north from the U.S., complicating overdoses. When the cold air hits a body whose heart rate has been slowed by these sedatives, the risk of death skyrockets. Outreach workers like Brooke and Victoria describe their days as a triage of human suffering. 36 people are not hungry today because of us, she says. 36 people feel seen and cared for. But for every person they feed, another falls through the cracks. Canada is vast and its winters are long. But the coldness of the streets is matched only by the warmth of those who refuse to give up. The soup kitchens in Toronto, the mobile missions in Victoria, they are the only thing standing between thousands of people and the grave. But charity is not policy. And until Canada treats housing as a human right rather than a commodity, the freeze will continue. Los Angeles, the collapse of the dream. Fly south to the land of eternal sunshine. Los Angeles, the entertainment capital of the world, the dream factory. But in 2025, the dream has curdled. The official count says there are 72,308 human beings experiencing homelessness in Los Angeles County. Let that number sink in. That is an army. It is the population of a mid-sized American city, scattered across sidewalks, under bridges, and in the dry riverbeds of the LA River. While officials celebrate a slight statistical decline of a percent drop from the previous year, the reality on the ground feels different. The crisis hasn't disappeared. It has just shifted shape. We are seeing the rise of the silver tsunami. Nearly 40% of the homeless population in California is now over the age of 50. These are not drug addicts who burned out young. These are our elders. These are people like Jose, who fell into homelessness after his family members passed away and he couldn't cover the rent. Alone. These are people like Ushan, 55 years old, raised by his grandparents, who found himself on the street when the safety net snapped. Walk down the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Tourists look down at the pink terrazzo stars, hunting for the names of their favorite celebrities. But if they looked up, they would see the tent cities lining the side streets. They would see the RVs parked bumper to bumper along Forest Lawn Drive, broken down vehicles that serve as the last refuge for the working poor. The city has launched aggressive programs like Inside Safe, moving people from encampments into motels. But the system is overwhelmed. Reports from 2025 indicate that the data tracking these programs is flawed, with errors double counting participants and mislabeling encampment sites. It is a shell game of human lives. And then there is the legal crackdown, following the Supreme Court's Grants Pass ruling, which allowed cities to ban public camping. Los Angeles has intensified its enforcement of 41.18 zones, areas around schools, and parks where sitting or sleeping is illegal. We watched a sweep on the Venice Beach boardwalk in late 2025. It was a rainy Saturday. Police officers moved door to door along the public restrooms, where unhoused people had sought shelter from the storm. They weren't arrested, but they were evicted into the rain. Move along, the officers said. But move along to where? The shelters are full. The interim housing is at capacity. The pathway to permanent housing is a logjam. Emergency crews are witnessing the fallout. Last year, more than 23,000 calls to 911 in LA were related to homelessness. But it isn't just medical emergencies. It is the exhaustion of a population pushed beyond its limits. In Skid Row, the epicenter, the air is heavy with the weight of thousands of lives in limbo. It is a containment zone, a place where the city's failures are concentrated into 50 city blocks. Yet even here, there is resilience. The Los Angeles Mission and the Downtown Women's Center are fighting a daily battle to restore dignity. They are the ones providing the showers, the meals, and the case management that the government struggles to deliver at scale. Los Angeles is a city of contrasts. It is a place where $1 billion movie is greenlit in a glass tower, while a block away, a veteran trades his medals for a meal. It is a city unraveling in slow motion, and the world is watching. Kensington's chemical warfare. If Los Angeles is the face of the economic crisis, Kensington and Philadelphia is the face of the biological crisis. In Kensington's forsaken alleys, the nightmare has mutated. We are no longer talking about heroin. We are barely even talking about fentanyl anymore. We are talking about medetomidine. In mid-2024, this powerful veterinary sedative 100 to 200 times more potent than xylazine began to surge in the Philadelphia drug supply. By January 2025, it was dominating the toxic mix. Street names call it rhino tranq. The effects are horrific. It causes a profound, heavy sedation that looks like a coma. Heart rates drop to dangerous levels, bradycardia. People slump in twisted, unnatural positions, their bodies frozen in catatonic stupors. I smoke hater right now, a young user tells us, his eyes glassy. It ain't like it used to be. You don't get high, you just go out. The streets of Kensington stink of filth and rot. Pavements are blanketed in discarded needles and the orange caps of syringes. But the most terrifying sight is the flesh. Xylazine, the previous adulterant, was known for causing necrotic skin ulcers. Medetomidine continues this trend but adds a new layer of danger because it is not an opioid. Naloxone Narcan does not reverse its effects. Outreach workers rush to an overdose. They spray Narcan. The person starts breathing again, perhaps, but they do not wake up. They remain trapped in the medetomidine nod, vulnerable to robbery, assault, or the elements. Over 4,500 overdose deaths scarred Philadelphia in recent years. While 2024 saw a slight statistical dip, the seizure of 27 million fentanyl doses in the metro area in 2025 proves the flood is not stopping. It is an open-air bazaar of death. Communities fracture, says a local pastor. When will this relentless poison cease devouring the living? The city has responded with force. Mayor Sherelle Parker's administration launched a Kensington Community Revival Plan, initiating massive sweeps of the encampments on Kensington Avenue in May 2024. They cleared the tents. They power washed the sidewalks. But where did the people go? Our investigation found that they didn't disappear. They dispersed. They moved to the side streets, to the parks like McPherson Square, to the underpasses of I-95. The balloon effect just pushed the misery out of sight of the main thoroughfare. The sidewalk clutter tells the story of this displacement. Tattered clothes, torn duffel bags, a jacket folded carefully against a cold wall. These aren't trash. They are the fragments of lives interrupted by the command to move it or lose it. If everything you owned had to fit into one bag, what would you choose to carry? That is the question every resident of Kensington faces every morning when the police cruisers roll down the block. The lost generation, teenagers in the war zone. Perhaps the most heartbreaking casualty of this war is the youth. Teenagers in Kensington are growing up in an environment where the abnormal has become routine. Youth poverty remains painfully high in 2025. But it isn't just about money, it is about exposure. Teachers and outreach workers are seeing a devastating pattern. Teenagers quietly disappearing from classrooms. Kids who were once present, laughing, participating suddenly gone. It often begins with curiosity mixed with peer pressure, or perhaps a desperate need to escape the trauma of their home life. They wander into the blocks where the dealers operate with impunity. Just try it once, someone says. But in Kensington, with medetomidine and fentanyl in the mix, once can be a death sentence or a life sentence of addiction. Counselors describe how a single experiment can flip a teenager's world upside down. They don't return to school the next day. Then a week passes. then a month. Eventually, their name fades from the attendance sheet and they become another ghost on the avenue. Behind each missing teen is a story of unmet needs. They aren't seeking trouble, they are seeking relief from stress, trauma, or loneliness. And let's not forget the LGBTQ youth. In 2025, they represent a staggering 40% of the homeless youth population, despite being only 7% of the general youth population. Rejected by families, they flock to cities like Philadelphia and Los Angeles seeking community, only to find predation. Organizations like Covenant House and Valley Youth House are fighting to save them. They offer beds, but more importantly, they offer safety. But the streets are always recruiting. The dealers are always hiring. The cycle of poverty feeds the cycle of addiction, and the youth are the fuel. The system's failure and the nonprofit lifeline. Why is this happening? Why, in the richest nation on earth, is this allowed to continue? The causes are not a mystery. They are policy choices. In 2025, rents in Philadelphia, Los Angeles, and across the nation continue to climb faster than wages. HUD reports that nearly 40% of people without shelter reach that point because of job loss or housing they simply couldn't afford. It is an economy that leaves people behind. Mental health care is the other fault line. With psychiatric beds disappearing and uninsured rates still high, thousands struggle to get consistent support. When treatment is out of reach, people self-medicate. The arrival of fentanyl and metamethadone only deepened that vulnerability. Trump's really got us in the gutter right now, the man in the intro said. But it isn't just one administration. It is decades of disinvestment. It is the housing first model facing a funding cliff as federal pandemic relief dollars dry up. It is the criminalization of poverty following the grants past Supreme Court ruling. But where the government fails, the community steps in. Nonprofit organizations are the steady heartbeat of Kensington. In 2025, Prevention Point Philadelphia remains one of the few places where anyone can walk in and feel safe. Nurses clean wounds that look like something from a horror movie. Volunteers serve meals with care. They treat people by name. Then there is Savage Sisters Recovery. Their outreach teams, many of them survivors of these very streets, walk the blocks every single day. They don't just hand out Narcan and sterile water, they hand out hope. They sit on the curb with someone who hasn't spoken to another human being all day. They remind them they still matter. Project Home focuses on rebuilding futures, offering 62 units of recovery residence where people can rest, reflect, and rebuild. These organizations are fighting a two-front war, one against the drug supply and another against the political pressure to shut them down. City council members have pushed to restrict mobile outreach vans, arguing they attract crime. But the providers argue they are the only thing keeping people alive. Harm reduction isn't enabling, says an advocate. It's keeping someone alive long enough for them to make a different choice. The future, is there a way back? As we look toward the end of 2025, the picture is complex. National data suggests a decline in overdose deaths, down roughly 27%, according to the CDC's provisional data. But experts warn this might be a data lag or a temporary dip before the next synthetic wave hits. The rise of metamethadone threatens to undo all that progress. We are seeing some victories. In Houston, despite funding challenges, the system has housed over 32,000 people since 2012. In Columbus, Ohio, the Vista Village Tiny Home Project is proving that dignified, small-scale housing can work. In Finland, the Housing First model has all but eliminated street homelessness. But the challenges are mounting. The silver tsunami means our shelters are filling with wheelchairs and walkers. The end of federal funding creates a fiscal cliff for housing vouchers. So what is the answer? It isn't just more shelters. It isn't just more arrests. It is a fundamental shift in how we view housing and healthcare. If I go to sleep every night and I wake up every day, I still have hope to make it another day, says a resident of a shelter in Toronto. That hope is the fuel. We need to invest in street medicine, bringing doctors out of the hospitals and under the bridges. We need to protect tenants from rent evictions. We need to recognize that addiction is a healthcare crisis, not a moral failing. The Mirror, Homelessness in 2025 is a deeply human story. It is built from long nights without safety, mornings filled with uncertainty, and the quiet determination of people trying to hold their lives together. Even as we see national progress in some areas, places like Kensington, Skid Row, and the Downtown Eastside of Vancouver show us that healing doesn't come evenly. Some streets still echo with years of hardship, yet beneath these difficult realities, resilience continues to shine. You can see it in neighbors who share food when they barely have enough for themselves, in volunteers who call residents by name because dignity matters, in outreach workers who return day after day with compassion instead of judgment. These small acts, repeated quietly, prove that hope still survives here, even when the surroundings feel overwhelming. But hope alone isn't enough. Real solutions require long-term commitment, stable housing, accessible treatment, leadership willing to address the roots, not just the symptoms. Without these deeper changes, communities will continue fighting uphill battles they shouldn't have to face alone. As Homeless US News continues to shine a light on these realities, our goal is simple: to make sure these voices are heard, to inspire meaningful action. Awareness is only the first step. What truly matters is what we choose to do with that awareness. Will you speak up? Will you support local efforts? Will you choose to care rather than look away? If this story made you think, or feel, or question, share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what your city is doing. Tell us what you think needs to change. And if you believe these stories need to be seen, hit that subscribe button. Join us, because every voice helps bring understanding to the communities that need it most. Love that. Got some samples, guys. A little better way. Thank you for watching. Now, go be someone's miracle.